Interim Board led by Dr. Stavros Nicolaou. Dr. Nicolaou and his fellow members, also Acting Chief Executive Paletsi Moseki and his executive team, and all other stakeholders. We particularly welcome, I have Andrew Bretzka and his staff from SACA, and obviously we particularly welcome the media to this engagement and this opportunity for them. I think without further ado, I'll call on Dr. Nicolaou to address everybody and bring us up to date on the latest board activities. Thank you, Dr. Nicolaou.
Thank you very much, Michael, and ladies and gentlemen, colleagues from the media, good morning, and thanks very much for making time today. This press conference is being held at a rather difficult and challenging time for cricket. However, in the spirit of how this board, this interim board, has operated over the past 5 months, today will be no exception. We believe to our colleagues in the media, and we believe in doing so in a transparent fashion. So today will be no exception. We will be transparent as we have been over the past few months. Has just been extended for a short period of time. I think the period of extension to the of May likely to be the final extension, and I think we will continue as we have in the past to be transparent in all our dealings and providing account to the various matters that we are dealing with. Today's press conference is going to be focused on the failed SGM, the status of the MRI, and where to from here, basically. We wouldn't like to cover any other aspect today, because we feel this requires a focused session, and we're probably going to break with tradition and put up a slide or two. I always debate whether it's great putting up slides when you're on a webinar like this, but I'm going to be tracking certain timelines, and I think it probably would work best if we put up these timelines graphically for you to see this. We will, of course, at the end of the webinar, and I hope we've got everybody's details on this webinar, Tammy and Sipa, we will, again, in the interest of being completely and fully transparent, share this timeline with you, as well as some of the associated correspondence that goes with it. Full transparency, and intend to do so by sharing a pack with you during the course of today. So, as I said, we're going to cover a timeline of how events unfolded that led to Saturday's disappointing SGM. We're going to give some sense of how we believe this matter can be resolved, and we pull back from the precipice. And then lastly, I will very briefly cover what the intended finality of the report. As you know, we have to submit a report. The interim board has to submit a report to the minister on its 9-point mandate. I'm not going to cover the other 8 points of the mandate today. I'm just going to refer to the Nicholson recommendations, but we will keep the media abreast of progress on that report, and certainly we will host a joint press conference with the minister when this report is handed over to him. So let me commence with the first order of business. If I can just have my next slide. I want to take you through various important timelines. And in speaking to these timelines, I will be addressing the number and immense inaccuracies that were presented by the Members' Council in their statement that they put out on the 20th of April. There were a number of inaccuracies and a number of misrepresentations. And I think it's really important, again, in the interest of transparency, that we set out the record as it happened, and we do so, again, with utmost transparency. Let me start off at the beginning. This board was appointed on the 15th of November 2020, and as part of its appointment by the Members' Council, of course, everyone knows the Members' Council appoints the board. As part of appointing this board, the MC also jointly agreed to the mandate that this board had to execute on. You all know by now that it is a 9-point mandate. And in fact, the first point in the mandate covered the implementation of the Nicholson recommendations and restoration of governance in the organization, given the previous governance missteps and failures that Cricket South Africa had experienced in the preceding period. It's important to flag that the mandate was accepted by the MC as well, because it speaks very much to the requirements to have executed timeously and on an agreed date the necessary amendments to the MRI that would give credence to the Nicholson recommendations and also to modernize governance in Cricket South Africa. So during the months of December, when we did have occasion to meet with the MC in joint meetings, of course, the Nicholson recommendations were discussed, and it was eventually agreed that we would put together a joint three-a-side, or what we called an MRI working group. And that MRI working group had its first joint meeting on the 27th of January, 2021. So you can see that the contentions that things were thrust upon the MC at the last moment cannot be factual, because there was a whole sequence of events, which I'm going to trace through these slides, that indicate the contrary. So the first three-a-side meeting, we resolved to host such a meeting on the 27th of January. And it was also agreed on the 27th, and of course we'll share all this correspondence with you, that SASCOC would be consulted. Not asked to approve anything, but to be consulted. The first meeting of this three-a-side took place on the 31st of January, and that dealt largely with the terms of reference and some of the material issues that needed to be dealt with in the MRI. And then there was a further meeting of the three-a-side. I'm going to interchangeably use three-a-side and MRI working group. They're the same entity. So the three-a-side met for a second time on the 1st of February, and it's material to understand that there was unanimous agreement on a number of key or major principles that constitute the amended MRI, and there was also an agreement to convey these principles to SASCOC at that meeting. So quite early on in this three-a-side process, and incidentally, the arrangement was that the three representatives from each side would carry a mandate on behalf of their respective entities. We felt that a three-a-side was a more efficient and less unwieldy way of working through a legal document, and that what we would do is get the three-a-sides to agree. That agreement would then eventually go back to the full interim board and the full members council. There would be sign-off, and that would trigger either the special general meeting or the annual general meeting. So let me carry on tracking this chronology. On the 3rd of February, the three-a-side met with a SASCOC delegation, and at that meeting it was also indicated to SASCOC that the minister of Arts, Culture and Sport, the Minister, was clear on the role of SASCOC. The Minister subsequently and on various occasions cleared up what he saw as the role of SASCOC, and again we will share correspondence to that effect as well. On the 8th of February, the interim board received correspondence from the SASCOC president indicating on the basis of their engagements with the minister that they would be withdrawing from any further three-a-side discussions until the MOI is at its final stages. Also material to point that out in terms of what happened on Saturday and SASCOC's involvement in the SGM. On the 16th of February, and I'm only covering the material dates. Naturally, there was a lot of activity between these dates as you see them. But I'm just trying to demonstrate a progressive trajectory here, and also the fact that this was an inclusive consultative process and certainly not one that was thrust upon the MC or any other entity at the last minute. On the 16th of February, the first draft MOI from ENS was shared with the Members' Council through the three-a-side for them to work through same and for them to comment on any concerning provisions or any provisions that required further clarity. Of course, the amendments to the MOI were premised on the earlier three-a-side discussions. If I can get the next slide, please. Okay, so during February and early March, this is subsequent to the MC receiving the MOI draft. So this was draft 1. We started to detect and sense as an interim board some pulling back on some of the fundamental principles that had previously been agreed. In particular, I'm referring to an independent majority board and an independent chairman. And during the course of, and I might just add that our clear impression was in the earlier three-a-sides that both of those principles had been accepted. During early March, I think that our concerns were confirmed around these two principles, in that I had a discussion with the acting president of the MC, Rian Richards. That was in the first week of March, and he indicated to me for the first time that that there was either some discomfort or further clarity required around these two fundamental principles. My line of response with Mr. Richards was and continues to be quite clear that the interim board, in terms of executing its mandate with respect to Nicholson, is negotiable on most things, but we cannot negotiate the principle of an independent majority board. It is contained in Nicholson. It's what good governance requires of any entity, and consequently our position on an independent majority board could not be deviated from. This led to on the 11th of March, a letter from myself to the Members' Council. I placed Michael Katz, who had been dealing with him and his team. It's not just Michael, he had a whole team working around us, the ENS team. I placed ENS and the ministry in copy, expressing our frustration as an interim board at the seeming pullback on both substantive matters and also timelines. We were, of course, by that stage, we had received our first extension as a board. So our tenure had been extended by a further period, and that extension was to the 17th of April. We continuously made reference to this, both in discussions and in writing to the Members' Council. So their contention that they were surprised around the 17th of April or didn't have sufficient time, well, I suppose if you consider 2 or 3 months as insufficient time, then I think there's a real problem. So I think we're very clear, including in this correspondence, which we will share, that the 17th of April deadline was highlighted. In any event, the Members' Council ought to have known that the term of office of this interim board was going to, in any event, expire on the 17th. Let me move on to the 14th of March. It was decided off the back of the 11th of March correspondence that a dedicated session would be held between Michael Katz and his team and the Members' Council in order to go through any areas of discomfort with an idea of clarifying these areas, getting agreement on them, and moving forward to either an SGM or an AGM. This was, the IB were not part of this dedicated session, deliberately so. Michael Katz and his team spent about an hour and a half, went through the various issues, and certainly the report back from Michael Katz to the IB was a positive feedback, and that he felt that most of the areas of discomfort had been addressed, if not all of them, and that we would be working on finalizing an MRI that we could eventually put in front of a SGM. 16th of March, let me just cover one other additional area that I should have covered. On the 12th of March, further correspondence from the Members' Council reconfirming, there's a typing error there, reconfirming the 17th of April again as the SGM date. 16th of March, IB writes to the Members' Council inter alia on the process that needs to be followed to finalize the MRI, and also again the process that needs to be met if we are to meet the SGM deadline of 17 April. So there's a recurrent theme here. The 17th of April was certainly the date that was earmarked, and there could be no surprises that we needed to conclude matters by the 17th. Fast track further on, still on the 16th of March, the IB and the MC meet, and they agree that there would be inter alia in this meeting support for a short notice to be condoned due to the MC delays in respect of setting up the SGM. So again, the claims by the MC that this was, a short notice was sprung on them. This was an express agreement that was reached on the 16th and at subsequent junctures, where we agreed, given the urgency of the matter, we would concede the normal notice period, and we would go with a shortened notice period, which is in fact what we pursued on Saturday. Between the 16th of March and the 30th of March, regrettably, there's further vacillation on the two substantive issues of an independent majority board and an independent chairperson. And that then leads to the minister calling a meeting between the Members' Council and the interim board. At that meeting on the 30th of March, which was chaired by the minister made it clear that his expectations were, in terms of executing the mandate, that both principles of an independent majority board and an independent chair are the least he can expect, and that the Members' Council needed to resolve this, agree to it, and move to an AGM or an SGM. I'm using the two terms interchangeably. It landed up being an SGM, of course. At the same meeting, the minister provides an ultimatum to the Members' Council to resolve on these two issues of independence and an independent chair. And he requests that this is done by the Tuesday, straight after Easter Monday. And immediately after this meeting, on the 31st of March, the minister's meeting that is, the MC requests an extension to the minister due to the Easter holidays. If I can get the next slide. The minister accedes to the extension of the members' council and gives the members' council until the 8th of April to come back to him on agreement with respect to an independent majority board and an independent chair. The members' council respond by the 8th and indicate to the minister that they could not find consensus amongst the various affiliates with respect to an independent majority board and an independent chair. Naturally, the minister is disappointed, as is the interim board, particularly given the progress that was made beforehand, and we can see that the minister's patience is wearing thin in that meeting. The minister then gives the members' council an additional 24 hours in which to come back and resolve this. A further meeting was held 24 hours later on the 9th of April. In that meeting, again chaired by the minister, was the acting president of the MC, carrying a mandate on behalf of the MC, and myself representing the interim board. And of course, the minister's advisors were in the meeting as well. At that meeting, we felt tremendous progress was made because Mr. Richards, representing the members' council, agreed to both a special general meeting to be held on the 17th of April, and also that the MC had accepted the principles of a majority independent board and an independent chair. On the strength of that, we decide then to go hell for leather and do whatever is necessary to deliver an SGM 8 days later on the 17th of April. We also have a firm commitment amongst all of the parties in that meeting that we would move heaven and earth to ensure that we work around the clock, including ENS working around the clock, to ensure that we have a finally agreed MRR that we can place before the SGM on the 17th. Let me move on. The 10th of April, the IB confirms the SGM details, the notice period, the date and the process of how the meeting should take place, and again that it's confirmed for 17th April. On the 10th of April, we also request the members' council to provide any final inputs into the latest draft version of the MRI by noon of the 12th of April, so in 2 days' time, which was an agreement we had that we would turn the documents around quickly and expediently. We also offered, as the interim board, to the MC, either to meet again in a 3-a-side or to have the full IB and MC meet and have the 3-a-side leading the discussions in that meeting. And the only purpose of that was to clarify any outstanding issues, provisions, and or clauses of the MRI draft version. Our offer is again extended to meet on the 11th of April, and also on the 11th of April, ENS confirmed notice, instruction, and date of the 17th of April, and distribute a further marked up version of the MOI, which now becomes the final MOI for consideration by the MC. We also agree with the MC that again there would be a rapid turnaround of the MOI document. On the 15th of April.
Sorry, Doc, if Dr. Steff, so I just butt in for a moment. Just to let you know that the broadcast is going on live on SABC. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, all right. Okay, the MC letter configuring, the MC letter confirming that they only have one additional input into the MRI is received by them on the 15th of April. The only additional input that the MC required at that point in time was a refinement of a definition of what a non-independent director is. That was immediately sent to Michael Katz and his team, and they accepted and in fact expanded on the definition, which would have satisfied the member council's query with respect to the definition of a non-independent director. Next slide. So in essence, what I'm saying to you colleagues is that on the 15th of April, we were in a really good space because we had turned around various versions of an MRI. And on the 15th of April, the acting president of the Members' Council wrote back to us and confirmed that there were no further inputs to the MRI, save for the one definition that I mentioned. And as I said, that definition was turned around almost immediately by Michael Katz and his team. So we were in a really good position on the 15th. Of course, in parallel to this, we received a request from SASCOC via the Members' Council that SASCOC wished to receive a copy of the MRI and also wished to participate in the special general meeting. At that point in time, and as I've indicated on a number of occasions today, the minister's brief to the interim board was very clear with respect to the SASCOC matter. He was clear in that he had previously given the matter to SASCOC. They had handed it back to him. That's what triggered the formation of an interim board in the first instance, or partly in the first instance. And then secondly, that in terms of his Section 13 powers, he had asked SASCOC to desist from interfering in this particular process. So that was out of our hands, the SASCOC matter. It was clarified to us by the minister. And in fact, the minister wrote to SASCOC indicating the same thing. And the SASCOC correspondence from the minister was in fact to the SASCOC president, and I will read it to you very quickly. He says, the minister says to SASCOC, it has been brought to my attention that SASCOC, through a letter dated 11 April, is summoning CSA to a meeting to discuss the above matter, which is of course the MRI. I'm sure you will agree that as I'm presently seized with the matter in terms of Section 13 of the Act, it is not advisable for any other party to discuss the matter outside of my office. Accordingly, you are advised to desist from interfering with the process, especially when you have referred it to me. May I draw your attention to the fact that as CSA is not an Olympic sport, its primary relationship is with the ICC, who have not indicated any unhappiness with the process I've initiated. Okay, I'm happy, as I've done before, to update SASCOC on my interaction with the CSA at an appropriate time. So we were quite surprised when SASCOC arrived at the meeting on the Saturday, given this correspondence and also correspondence that we received from SASCOC as an interim board on the 9th of February. And now this was a correspondence from the president of SASCOC to the acting president, where he says SASCOC's withdrawal of its participation in the MRI committee, the three aside. So you can now understand the surprise of SASCOC arriving and speaking at the SGM on the 17th of April. Okay, I'm almost at the end of this, and I'm sorry I've been so verbose, but it was really important to give a full account here of how things unfolded. Okay, 16th of April, the documentation and notice, which included the defective notice, which we had discussed many weeks before, is circulated to the participants in the SGM. Of course, there is provision in law for you to give emergency notice to an SGM if the parties agree to same, which is exactly what happened. And you would have noted all the parties arrived, all the affiliates arrived for the SGM on the Saturday, the 17th. On the 16th of April, Cricket South Africa received a further request from SASCOC to be invited to the SGM. Our response back to them was that they are more than welcome to attend the SGM as guests. There were other guests, incidentally, including the media on Saturday. And any guest to our meeting, we explained, would carry observer status and not the right to vote and or to speak. On the 16th of April, that invitation to attend as observers is sent to SASCOC. And on the morning of the 17th of April, the SASCOC acting CEO, Mr. Ravin Govender, writes back to Cricket South Africa saying that SASCOC will not be attending the meeting. And then our fast track eventually, because so much happened in the hours preceding the meeting of the 17th, our fast track to the 17th SGM. I'm not going to cover the SGM in detail because just about everyone on this call was at the SGM, other than to say that it was exceedingly disappointing because many of the agreements and understandings that were reached prior to the 17th unraveled quite spectacularly at the meeting. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, we felt, to set cricket's governance pathway on a completely different course and to get onto the right side of history. We have and will continue to commend those affiliates in the Members' Council that voted positively for change. For those that didn't vote positively, regrettably, our disappointment continues to endure. And we are now where we are. I've covered the chronology. I'm going to shift to the next part of what I was going to brief you on, and that is to give you a sense of the current state of play and how does the interim board see matters unfolding. Of course, we don't want to crystal gaze too much. We're not in a position to do that. Suffice to say that after last Saturday's special general meeting, no, the most material crises in cricket began to manifest, cricket in our country. The minister, in response to the disappointing outcome of the SGM, a day later, or almost 18 hours later, in fact, issued a press statement. In that statement, he indicated that he was now left with no choice other than to trigger Section 13(5) of the Sports and Recreation Act, and that he had the powers to do so. He could not live with the ongoing governance failures and Cricket South Africa not reforming to address those governance failures and accepting a pathway and a structure that would restore governance. So he made it clear that he intended to trigger Section 13. Now, I don't want to get into speculating, and neither am I speaking for and on behalf of the minister. I'm certainly not doing that. It's not the duty or role of the board, the interim board, to pronounce on what these measures and or levers at the disposal of the minister are going to look like or play out, other than to say they would need to be gazetted. The minister has made it clear that these directives will be included in a gazette and that his team are working on a gazette. We also know that subsequent to that notice, the minister wrote to the Members' Council and as is procedurally required in administrative law, requested them to give him an indication why he should not go ahead in the absence of not adopting these governance measures, why he should not go ahead with Section 13 interventions. Of course, we are not privy to that correspondence. We are only privy to what is out there publicly at the moment on this. But our further understanding is the Members' Council, and apologies, the minister gave the Members' Council a deadline to respond to him on why he shouldn't proceed. That deadline was 5 o'clock 2 days ago. Okay, so that was on Tuesday the 20th. Our understanding is that the Members' Council wrote back to the minister. Their response did not satisfy the minister's requirements or compel him to change his mind on the matter. Our further understanding is that the MC called for an indaba of sorts, and I'll give you the interim board's views around that in a moment. So we are right now, to summarize, in a situation where a minister is in a position to trigger measures he has and powers he has at his disposal in terms of the Act. The consequences of those would be extremely dire for cricket. It would have financial, economic, developmental, and of course, sporting consequences. It would plunge cricket, we think, into a significant crisis. And we are also that the ball now sits firmly with the Members' Council. So what can be done to save the situation and rescue the day? Okay, we're of the firm belief that if the Members' Council have agreed, as they've indicated on a number of occasions, if they have agreed to these fundamental principles in governance, I call it Governance 101, an independent board is, a majority board is 101, as is an independent chair, it's 101. You can't hide behind facades and try and tweak a language here and there because you're resisting change. Either you're accepting governance and implementing Nicholson, or you're not. And I'm afraid we, at the moment, in the position where we're not as a Members' Council. So the Members' Council can remedy the situation instantly, we believe, if they are to do the following. If they get their members to pass a resolution that says it is our intention to get 75% or more of the affiliates voting in favor of accepting a memorandum of incorporation, and we will and we resolve this ahead of the time of commencing with a Section 60, a Section 60 provision. Now, what is Section 60? Section 60 of the Companies Act allows you to institute a special resolution by round robin, and if everyone signs that round robin resolution in 24 hours, crisis averted, minister pulls back, we work towards an AGM, this interim board finishes its work, hands it over, and in parallel to all of this, we work through a nominations committee process to look at eligible, suitable, and appropriate candidates for a new board. So it's quite, it's not like there's no process now to resolve this, but the will and conviction, I'm afraid, lies with the Members' Council. Their statement of the 20th of April, 2 days ago, which incidentally preceded their response back to the minister, the response that the minister subsequently rejected, we understand. Their statement was not very, it wasn't very constructive, and neither was it useful, because I've shown you through this chronology, there's been extensive consultation. there were no dates thrust upon people at the last minute. These were dates all agreed well in advance. The SASCOP matter was clear. It only clouded the issue, I'm afraid. And some will say allegedly, deliberately so. We were very clear on majority independent board, what that means. Okay. And it means a board of 13, seven independents, 2 executives, a CEO and a CFO, and 4 non-independents. Can we increase the board to 13 instead of 11 to get 1 more non-independent? We could look at that. We could go with a permutation of 8, 5, and 2 if we need to. We can play around with that, but we cannot deviate from the principle that you have your 2 executives and a majority of independents. To make assertions around not being given sufficient time, well, I've mapped out for you that we've been going through this process virtually from the beginning of the inception of this board. So I just don't know where some of these comments come from, to be honest, and they're really not constructive. Finally, to claim that the SGM was highly unorthodox, unfortunate, and unethical because the interim board calls for transparency in voting. We reject that outrightly with the contempt it deserves, to be honest. We've called for transparency, accountability in cricket, and we will continue that till the last day, which is imminent. It's almost our last day. In fact, when we hand over that report, we'll be done. So this statement that they put out, I'm afraid, is inaccurate. It doesn't help solve the process, and neither does it help calling for an indaba, okay? Because this is tactically what plays out in the background. You call for all these meetings, you delay the process further, then you get another legal opinion, then you call another meeting, and so you go on. And this has been going on for 9 years. I don't have to tell you. Okay. So there's only one thing, and the board is trying to be constructive here. There's only one thing that can be done, and that is the MC resolve 75%. We will work with them with greatest of pleasure to get an MOR over the line. But we cannot have another undertaking that it's over the line only to go to an SGM and it fails. This time we would require a resolution. 75% are behind the resolution, and that initiates an immediate section 60. And that 60, you can state up front, has to be signed off in 48 hours, for example. If we to follow the simple process, we'll let all the water that's gone under the bridge, we'll let that go by. We can save cricket today if we do this. And that's probably why we call this conference, because we need to save cricket. And the best way to save it is members' council can pass these resolutions, crisis averted, and we can get to an AGM and a new board of independent majority directors before you know it. So thanks very much for entertaining me for such a long time. It was really important that I gave a full account and full transparency, and I'm really hoping I've achieved that this morning. And I'm now handing back to the program director.
Thank you, Dr. Nicola, for that very thorough and comprehensive update. We can now go to the media questions section of the agenda. So we'll proceed with that. I see we have Craig Ray's hand up already, so let's go to Craig. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, Stavros. Thanks for that update. Just playing devil's advocate for a moment. You know, this is a choice that the Members' Council has made in their vote. You know, is there not a feeling that, well, then cricket has to live with the vote of the Members' Council and the consequences that follow? I know that's not a great outcome, but, you know, are we not getting to the point where we're compelling them to vote another way which is slightly undemocratic. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, do you want to take a series of questions, or should I answer?
No, I think Dr. Nicola will take them one by one. I think it's because otherwise it can get a bit lost. And also it means it may stop other people asking the same question. Thank you. Please proceed.
Craig, so look, I think you're right, and I agree with your comments. But I think the only thing that's changed from last week or last Saturday is that we now fully understand, well, we have a better appreciation. I can't say we fully understand of the consequences of invoking Section 13. But I think we now are coming to terms with the calamity that lies before us. And I'm hoping that we've seen a number of the affiliates coming out and changing positions, actually. A number of them have put out statements in the last 24, 48 hours. So I'm really hopeful that this can be done, because I can't see any other option. The option of a Section 13 and following through is just too calamitous to contemplate. So I think that's the part that's changed, Craig. We're also, if there are any outstanding issues in the MRI, other than those two fundamental principles that we've discussed, that the MC might now come and say, look, we thought we had covered everything, we haven't. Does the structure apply to clubs and affiliates? That was a question. Even though we had made that crystal clear previously, it's still come back this week as an issue. So for those type of issues, more than happy to sit down with them, get those over the line. We can't deviate on the two key principles that I keep speaking about. So those are the two things that have changed. I think the reality is hitting home this week. And also secondly, if there are minor refinements, we can look at doing those, provided there's a willingness to go the route of a majority resolution and then a Section 60.
Thank you, Dr. Nicola. We'll now move on to Fadas Nunda from Cricinfo, please.
Thanks, Michael. Dr. Nicola, I'm just wondering, you say the interim board's completion of work is imminent. Do you know when that will be, and what will the consequences be if you hand in the report with cricket still in the state of limbo? You know, would the interim board walk away, and would we just continue like this?
Okay, for those, please call me Stavros, otherwise I'm going to start calling you Ms. Munda. So for those, let me just touch on the status of the report firstly. The report covers the 9-point mandate and some other ancillary issues that have come up during the term of this office. But fundamentally, this was an interim structure that doesn't have any aspirations, or none of the people that are on this board have aspirations of coming back on the next board or becoming involved in cricket directly, right? So, and that was an important independence element that we had to take cognizance of and agree early on. So the report will cover all 9 of these issues, including whatever the outcome is on the MRI. We're of the belief that we've made some significant progress on the other 8 points of the mandate, including dealing with matters like the restructuring of domestic cricket. I don't know if my colleague Andre Odendaal is on the call. The SJN initiative, I think that's really getting some significant traction now. So by and large, we've been able to positively address many of the points in the 9-point mandate. So regardless of how things end up, we will be handing over a report. I'm hoping that the report is positive on all 9 and not just 8 of the 9 points, and that we can close out eventually with an AGM and a new board in place. What happens if there isn't a new board, right? So what happens if we don't hold an AGM? You're going to then be left with a lacuna, and a serious governance issue after the 14th of May. There's various ways of addressing that. I mean, you could look at appointing another interim board, possibly. There's some various other solutions, some of which require legal considerations, which we are presently exploring. I don't want to comment on what those options might be. I think suffice to say it for today, that if we don't get to an AGM and a new board on the 15th of May, we are likely to have a governance lacuna, which will only further exacerbate the problem. And that's why it is so important when we agree timelines. So if we agree with the MC, the 17th of April, the MC need to understand the consequences not only from a governance point of view, but also the consequences of hardworking employees in Cricket South Africa, consequences on players, all of these people. These missteps and failure to meet deadlines, kicking the can down the road, it has significant consequences, I'm afraid. So for this, we are working on various options. We will present those to the minister. We're likely to do so before we hand over our report, in fact. And when we do the handover, as I indicated earlier, it will be in the full glare of the media.
Thank you. We'll move on to Ken Boland, please, Ken.
Ken, I think you might be on mute.
Ken, are you there? Well, if he's got a problem, then we can move on then to Tiesetso, please.
Thank you very much, Michael. Good afternoon to everybody. To Stavros, when you say you are now calling for members' council to sort of guarantee that they have a 75% support for the amendment to pass, I mean, are you saying that they should vote in a manner that puts them at odds with their SASCOC membership compliance? Because it is very clear that for the MOI to pass, there is no way around it. I'm not sure if you are aware, but it needs to be sent to SASCOC for consideration and approval. That is clear in the Constitution. So when you say you want 75% from the members' council to make sure that the MOI passed, are you saying that they should go against the requirements of their SASCOC membership? Thank you.
So first of all, I'm not compelling anyone to vote in a particular way, right? I'm just looking at a practical solution, how you can resolve this, because one can hide behind facades of SASCOC and process. You either have a conviction enough to do something or you don't. And if you've got that conviction, you will find ways to remain compliant within the confines of the law. And incidentally, there are conflicting legal opinions, by the way, on the SASCOC matter. The SASCOC pulled out of the process, as I indicated to Setso earlier. Okay, there are, as I indicated a few seconds ago, different legal opinions and interpretations around that. But for me, the most important thing here is, doesn't matter what I say or anybody else on this call, if the members' council have conviction to have new governance, modern day governance, if they have conviction to follow through on something that they themselves agreed to, which is Nicholson, then they must do whatever is necessary, legal compliance and otherwise, to deliver the end. What we cannot entertain as a country any longer is hiding behind facades of legal and more meetings. That's the point I'm making. So it's really up to the members' council to find, if they feel SASCOC is stumbling, they must find a resolution around it. And they're quite able to do that, frankly. And that's the point I'm making here today.
Thank you, Stavros. Let's move on to Tinus van Staden, please.
Hi, Stavros. I know it's probably a question better asked to the members' council, but in your dealings with them, what's the reason that they've given, or the idea that you've got, that why don't they want to agree to a more independent board with an independent chairperson?
Okay, Michael, I'm not sure I heard the entire question from Tinus. You kind of faded out. Would you mind repeating it, please?
Tinus, just go again.
Sorry, I'm saying, like, I know it's probably a better question for the members' council, but in your dealings with them, what has been the reason that they've given, or what idea did you get? What's the reason for them not wanting to agree to an independent board and an independent chairperson?
Okay.
Did you get that all right?
I did get it, thanks. It's very difficult for me to answer that, because all I can say is that, and that's why I'd really hoped we had an open vote on Saturday, because it would have told us exactly who believes in that principle of governance and who doesn't. And unfortunately, we didn't get that open vote. It was a secret ballot, despite, I think, best attempts to make it an open vote. And so it's very difficult for me to answer that, other than to say that for me the most telling thing was when on the 8th of April, the acting president, myself, and the minister met. It was late in the evening on a Friday. It was a Friday the 8th. And at that meeting, the acting president indicated that there was a majority support from the members' council with respect to an independent majority board and an independent chair. So why that changed, how it changed, how the numbers dropped to 43%, I can't really say and don't want to speculate.
Thank you, Stavros. Ken, I think we've got you back again. Would you like to put your question? Okay, if Ken's still having problems, let's move on to Neil Manthorpe, please.
Hi, Stavros. I spoke to a board member from one of the provinces yesterday, which abstained at the SGM on Saturday, and he said to me that their concern was around the definition of the word independent. And his concern was that independent meant somebody who had nothing to do with cricket, rather than a recent or strong provincial affiliation. I wondered whether that was something that you'd encountered and whether you could clarify for the record.
Neil, thanks very much for that question. Let me cover what an independent means. An independent doesn't exclude anyone that's previously had cricketing experience in administration or otherwise. It cannot be anyone that is currently involved in cricket. So you cannot have someone that is on the board of one of the affiliates or unions also serving in an independent capacity. They can serve in a non-independent capacity, but cannot serve in an independent capacity. I'm quite surprised that this issue still comes up, because we've been through it on a number of occasions. And as far as I'm concerned, and so is Michael Katz, the language is quite clear in the MRI, or the revised MRI. So a typical example, just that we've actually used with the members' council, is if I'm coaching my son's cricket team at St. David's, does that preclude me from coming on as an independent? It doesn't, because I'm not actively involved in the administration of cricket. I cannot be conflicted. And what we're trying to avoid here is a conflict of interest, where you're marking your own homework. We cannot have situations where you mark your own homework. Okay. If, however, you serve on a board of one of the unions, you naturally would be conflicted and can't serve as an independent. And we've used these examples. Let me give you another example. And I'm just looking at the example, not the personality. So please don't hold me to this or read anything into this whatsoever. Ali Bacha was an administrator some time ago. He hasn't been. So Ali Bacha would qualify as as an independent because he served out what we call a cooling off period, or some people call it a freeze off period. So we've been through all of these things before. I don't think there's any ambiguity. It's what's generally accepted in government, in Kings 3 and 4. If it's for clarity, we're happy to do that. But the principle is a widely held one and has been accepted. Hopefully that a listed company or whatever the entity is, the nominations committee of that company, or the nominations committee of the board of that company, will set out the criteria that it looks for. And it might well stipulate that what you need is you need someone that's had international experience or domestic experience. As you would set on any board, you're going to look at the right mix of skills. Someone with accounting experience, it's a risk committee, and of course in cricket, you cricketing experience. So you one of the criteria. You certainly don't need to include that in an MOI, to be honest. Include that level of detail in any MOI, whether you're talking a listed company or any other entity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stavros. Ken Borland has sent his question through as he said. He wants to know what the MOI says about the independent directors nomination panel, and also the composition of the board, whether we're talking about 742 or 752. And he also would like to know how does the minister's action get ungazetted if this thing gets sorted out? Stavros, thank you.
Okay, Ken, thanks for those questions. Firstly, the size of the board, we're not absolutely fixated on. Sizes of boards vary. I mean, there's listed companies that have got a market cap of 100 billion rand or in excess of that have only got an 11-person board. Some have got a 9-person board. I think Bidvest has got a much bigger board, we were told last night. So we're not hung up on the size of the board. We just think for the relative size of this business, Cricket South Africa, the number of 13 that we've put forward is appropriate. And the 13 would be, and when I say we're not fixated, all we're seeking here is that you've got a majority independent board. So if it's a board of 15, then 8 must be independent. If it's a board of 13, then 7 must be independent, so that the independents are always in a majority. The proposal specifically that we put forward in the MOI is as follows. Board of 13, 7 independents, 4 non-independents, and 2 executives. So it gives you a 7-6 breakdown of independents, and of course an independent chair. So Ken, hopefully I've answered your first 2 questions. On the next issue, and I don't want to by any stretch portray to be representing the minister here. I'm not. My understanding is it does take a couple of days to put out a gazette. But I would imagine, in fact, I'd be astonished if the minister hasn't already been taking advice all along from the state lawyers. I mean, that's the normal process. That usually leads to a gazette which gets notices, which gets put out in a notice. And I would imagine for something of this nature, where the powers reside with the minister, I would imagine it can be implemented in 30 days. Don't hold me to that. I'm not a lawyer. As you know, I'm a pharmacist. So I don't want to comment on the legal processes, but there is a timeline with respect to putting out a gazette and implementing it. And that is why I'm saying as a cricketing fraternity here, let's constructively use this opportunity to solve the problem before it gets there. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Stavros. Ken just said he asked his first question, Paul. He just wants to know who would be on the nominations committee if anything's settled on them.
Okay, so the nominations committee, as we've proposed it in the MRI, and I think we've agreed this because we got the feedback from the MC that they were comfortable with this. In no particular order, it would be a nominations committee made up of 6 constituents. As I said, I'm not giving this in any particular order. The first constituency would have, each constituency would have 1 representative on NomCo. The first one is the Institute of Directors, and we've also proposed that their representative chairs the nominations committee. You'd have 1 person from the members, or a representative from the members' council. So it doesn't have to be someone from the members' council. It could be that they say we're putting XYZ forward. Someone from SAICA, the South African Institute for Chartered Accountants, someone from the legal fraternity, and then someone from the former players. Yeah, that's it. That would make up the nominations committee. And remember, the nominations committee is only nominating independent directors. So if we stick to the 13-member board, they would put forward 7 names. 4 names would come automatically from the members' council. So it's not, I mean, I've heard this in the corridors as well, that the MC are not going to have representation. That's not true. They will have inputs into who gets appointed as an independent and also have 4 seats themselves.
Thank you, Stavros. We'll now move on to Phyllis Sunday from Newsroom Africa, please.
Thanks, Michael. Morning or afternoon, everyone. Dr. Stavros, I wanted to find out, has there been any interaction with SASCOC? Because seemingly at some point, they are a bit of a stumbling block to this whole process, mixed together with the reluctance from the members' council to amend the MOI. So has there been, from a interim board point of view, been any sort of interaction with the SASCOC body to try and resolve and find ways to try and resolve the impasse and adopt this MOI? Thank you.
Okay. Pilisande, I'm going to answer that by reading SASCOC's letter, because I think I went through this in the chronology and I should have read this letter to you. So let me read it to you. It's a short letter. It's a letter dated the 9th of February 2021. It's from the president of SASCOC, Barry Hendricks, to the acting president of the Members' Council, Mr. Rion Richards. He says, "Dear acting president, heading, SASCOC's withdrawal of its participation in the MRI committee." That's the 3-a-side that I spoke about, right? "As per your request, myself and members of the SASCOC board and the SASCOC staff engaged with the committee established to revise the Cricket South Africa MRI. During the meeting, the SASCOC members engaged with the committee and provided the documents that you required regarding SASCOC membership criteria. A SASCOC task team was established to assist you further in this process. Today, the SASCOC board members of that task team," that's the 3-a-side, right? "Aside to the MRI committee, had a meeting with me regarding SASCOC's participation in this MRI forum. The advice is that we should withdraw from the forum at this stage and engage further with the minister on the CSA turnaround process." So we got to be clear here, they withdrew from this. "The SASCOC board has requested a meeting with the minister for next week. We therefore ask you to proceed with the process of formulating the MRI with the interim board members without the SASCOC members present." Okay, so I think this cannot be, it's as clear as daylight. "I apologize for the inconvenience caused, but commit to engaging with CSA as a member of good standing." So 2 takeouts from this letter. First of all, they withdrew from that 3-a-side process. They willingly withdrew. They weren't forced out of it. Okay, and secondly, they asked the Members' Council to proceed without them in formulating the MRI in conjunction with the interim board and without SASCOC members present. So, Pilisanda, hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Stavros. Our last 2 questions. The first one from Telf Advice, please.
Hello, Stavros. I'm just interested to know, has the interim board been in contact with the ICC at all? And I don't know whether you've heard the unofficial version that they're unlikely to take action if the Members' Council lays a complaint of interference.
Alfred, thanks for that question. Two brief responses. Firstly, the RB hasn't been in contact with the RCC. As you know, the CSA representative on the RCC is the acting president of the MC. Secondly, we've heard similar comments that the minister has been in contact with the RCC, and the RCC have so-called given their blessing, given the circumstances for his interventions. I cannot confirm the veracity of that, other than to say I've heard it from so many people now, that there might be some truth to it, I guess.
Thank you, Stavros. And Setso has just asked for a second question, so we'll finish off with him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I just want to ask Stavros, a majority board and an independent chairperson, is it practical at affiliate levels, or is it only going to happen at national level, and why? And also, CSA, I mean, there is no sports federation in the country that has a majority board and an independent chairperson, and they all have their problems. So why does the IB and the minister insist that it must only happen at CSA? Thank you.
Okay, so I can't comment for the minister, right? I'm only involved in cricket. I'm not involved in SARU or anything else. So I can't comment on any other. I think I think that question should be directed to the minister. It's not accurate to say that we're agitating that, that this should be changed in other instances as an IB. The IB is only focused on cricket. Secondly, we all know that Nicholson, which the entirety of the cricketing fraternity has accepted, including all 14 affiliates, all 14 have accepted to implement Nicholson. They did so some time ago. They did so again when they accepted the mandate of this board. So there cannot be any confusion, he said so, that this is not what they want. Otherwise, why would they accept? All 14 of them accepted the mandate up front. So unless one of them comes out and says, no, we outrightly reject Nicholson, let's disband the Nicholson recommendations, and let's keep on a bad governance trajectory. No one's come out and said that. And then lastly, we all know, to say so, in our country and around the world, to have proper governance, you require independent boards. There's no single person that knows anything about governance that would question an independent majority board if you want proper governance. And I'm afraid that the track record of cricket hasn't been good when you've had a majority of non-independents. So the track record is there. It's plain for all to see. I would not see why anyone, including anyone from the media, would want the perpetuation of a recipe that has failed in the past. You can carry on doing the same things again that haven't worked and expect a different result. You're not going to get one. You have to change things. And that's a difficult thing. Change does require getting out of a comfort zone. I accept that. But the change is a positive one, and one that we should all be embracing as South Africans and as cricket followers.
Yeah, is it practical at affiliate levels? And if not, why must it only happen at national level?
Well, I think the entity here is Cricket South Africa, right? We're not, our mandate is not to look at Western Province or KZN or anything. That's not the mandate here. The mandate is Cricket South Africa, which is an entirely different entity to any of the affiliates and unions. So our mandate is purely national, and that's what we're looking to execute on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stavros. I'm just going to allow one more question from Craig Ray, but this is the very last one. Thank you.
Hi, Stavros. Sorry to keep everyone. Just in light of all the statements by other affiliates over the last couple of days, Stavros, are you comfortable that the discussions of the three-person panels were being relayed accurately back to the affiliates? Because based on some of those statements, it seems like they didn't have all the information if we take them at face value. So I just want to be clear if you've had any indication that perhaps the correct message was not being sent back to the affiliates. Thank you.
Craig, I think that's an excellent question, and one for which I don't have an answer, to be honest. My suspicion could be that not everything was being passed back on, because there are just so many disjointed statements all along the way. And obviously, you know, unfortunately, I come out of the corporate world, so when you go into a meeting mandated, it's incumbent upon you to go back and feedback to the entirety of the organization, because if you sign an agreement and you don't deliver on it, you can't say, well, we forgot to mention this to the commercial manager, and he went off on his own tangent. So, Craig, I think your question is a really good one, because I've got my doubts now that this possibly wasn't being evenly distributed or communicated. I could be wrong, and neither do I want to speculate. I'm kind of more focused on the future here, that we've got a narrow window of opportunity, and myself and the interim board will play whatever role we have to constructively to get this over the line and to avert a crisis. If it means we got to communicate to all 14 affiliates and not through the channels that have been agreed, we're happy to do that. We cannot afford for cricket to plunge into a crisis. It's got such deep-seated, it's such a domino effect on the country, and it will hurt our image as a country. It's not fair on our players. It's not fair on anyone. And I'm really hoping that we can pull together in the next couple of days, avert the crisis, and then sit back. And if there's one thing I'd like to achieve before we go in the next few days, is that we move the talk out of the boardroom and onto the field. Nothing would give it, you know, when I came onto this board, I thought, you know what, you shouldn't be seeing any board meetings. I shouldn't be sitting here with you guys for an hour talking. You should be sitting here with either Temba or Dean and discussing cricket. You know, that's what I'd rather see. It's really not about administrators. We've made this about administrators. It's a crying shame. And we're embarrassing the game, I'm afraid. So if we can leave on the 14th and we've shifted the focus away from the boardroom onto the field and onto the spectators who want to go back and watch cricket, that will give me the greatest pleasure. And also that we resolve the Australian thing for them cancelling the tour. Those are my two sort of biggest things that I've got. Maybe it's because I'm too close to the COVID situation, but nothing would give me greater pleasure. We walk out of here on the 14th. We resolved this. We've tilted the boardroom politics back onto the field, and we're giving credit to the many good things that are going on in cricket. There are many good things. I mean, just speaking to the Aussies again, our biosafety measures have been immense. We should be congratulating the staff and the medical staff in particular. They're good things that have happened. We need to start focusing on those. Thanks very much. And let me just thank each and every one of you for attending today. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you, Stavros. That was a very stirring and fine message you left us all with, I think. I would like to thank you very much for your very detailed and sincere and direct answers to everything. We, as you all know, been here for an hour and a half, so I think we've covered things pretty comprehensively. And it's my duty to thank you, Stavros, for everything you've done today, and to thank the media and everybody else who's attended. And I wish you all a very pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.